Today I want to tell you a little bit about why it would be really beneficial to you to join my solo tantra workshop. No, I don't want to make you or turn you into a sex maniac or rope you into any kind of orgies or whatever that is, whatever your opinions, whatever the preconceptions immediately are, not at all. But what I want to give you is the weakest link, the missing link also, is to cover that and to help you. What I'm drawing out, what I'm trying to explain in a minute, is why this is so important to do some adult sex education so that you can be more balanced and that you can ultimately take charge of your life and go in the right direction. Let me explain what I mean, right? Because not everything, what it feels or looks like immediately is exactly this. So let me explain to you why the sexual aspects that we all in us humans are, or have, why this is so important. So let me explain, right? We have the feminine and the masculine. That's our brain halves, right? It's the left and the right hand hemisphere. So we're putting down here, that's the feminine and that's the masculine. And sooner or later we come down from spirit, so always the sides are masculine and feminine, and from top to bottom the spirit comes down into our human experience. So spirit is coming down, and sooner or later we create something called our birth. So now we're in this world. And now we have some zones that we go through. And the zones that we go through as human beings is of course birth. And then what's happened is we're going into a growth process. Everything starts to grow. We need to learn and so on. And after this growth process, there is something really, really amazing, and that is called crisis. From the crisis, we get to our limitations, and from our limitations, we're starting to learn. This is the ultimate journey. So after we have realized, wow, I have a crisis here. I don't get any further with this. I have a problem and I need to find a solution. We go into development. So we develop any kind of solutions and see and figure out how we get this the best. And thereafter we're going into completion. Right? So birth, growth, crisis, development, and completion of that. So as we come into our life, we basically have our spiritual level. Then afterwards, we're in symbiosis with the mama. We're creating the physical aspect. Then we're getting the emotional aspect. Then we're getting the sexual aspect. We realize like, wow. And then comes the mental aspect. So we have this. And also what is on the feminine, the same works for the masculine. So physical aspect, then emotional aspect, sexual aspect, and the mental aspect. These have all strings. So the longer the string, so more educated and more advanced we are with all of this. And what it is, I want to explain this to you in a form of a parachute. Parachute is, if you have a wonderful parachute that has opened up beautifully and that really goes and you can handle it, then you can glide through life. And this gives you tremendous opportunities. So when you achieve that everything goes into the completion phase, remember, we have our things of physical, emotional, sexual, and we have the mental capacity. So we're holding the string somewhere in completion, in the perfect scenario. Like this. Wonderful. So the same, a wonderful being that has the ultimate capacity to manifest in life is someone who is balanced, someone who is in harmony with the feminine and the masculine, in harmony in the sweet spot of the spirit and the matter. So the same thing goes for this. We're creating somewhere the holding position here, and the physical, the emotional, the sexual, and the mental finding themselves somewhere connected in the completion phase. So now what we have, and I have to be careful here is somehow the person. So when the person is there, right, a little nose, and the person is really happy. Left hand hemisphere, right, so it's exactly in the middle. Nice proper asexual body, so because anybody can do that, right? And then what we have is you're holding tight onto this. So now you see, here's the parachute, right? And these aspects are really important to understand, because these aspects that are here they have small groups. Like you go in school and you're not only learning one subject, but you're learning different subjects. And with all of this, you build a bigger and bigger picture, get more and more skills. So we have the phases that we have to go through. Or in the old times, we would say we're going through initiations. We're going through the growth phase, into the crisis, into the development phase, and the completion phase. On the other side, we have all the stuff that we have to deal with. We work with the feminine aspects and with masculine aspects. We have the physical, the emotional, the sexual, and the mental level. These are our strings that we're holding our parachute on, that we try to maneuver ourselves through life. So as we do this, we hang on there, and it's wonderful. Parachute is nice and stretched. And this point here is called freedom. Because when your parachute works that well, you have freedom to use all the forces that are in the air, currents or upward streams. You can go wherever you want to go, because this works well. Because you all have brought these lines into the completion phase. So this is really important. This is the outset of it. What I want to bring to you, why it is so important to come to one of the Solo Tantra workshops. Because the physical level, however you want to call it, that's always catered for. Right? There we have doctors, you have a gym, nutrition, it all goes for the physical. The emotional level is, we have psychologists and so on. They help us, the family, our partners, help us with the emotional development phases. We have the mental, that's the schools, the universities, our educational programs and work or whatever, helps us to mentally go through the process. But where's the sexual? Where's the sexual process, and who is looking after the sexual process? And this is the problem. So when we have this and everybody agrees, okay, this is wonderful. I'm hanging in the parachute and it's all going well. But what happens when we have our, right? So we have the growth, crisis, development, and completion phase. And here's our parachute. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And we don't get into the completion stage. We don't get any valuable, insightful, and actually helpful sexual education. What then? What happens then? So the sexual past, the sexual string, goes into the crisis, because there's maybe trauma, or in Ireland or in England there's loads of abuse I've heard of and so on. So we're staying somewhere between crisis and development, right? With our sexual string. And this is the amazing thing. You can have your physical string, your emotional string, or your mental string. That can be so long as it goes. But it is the weakest link that is responsible of the experience that you're having. Right? So because it's the weakest link, the smallest part that you're holding on to. So what happens when you have this there, and maybe here you have with your feminine side that somewhere got destroyed, or got suppressed, or got too much dominated, and it couldn't develop. Then what happens is this string of the sexual is only going into crisis and development. This is where you're stuck. So when that happens, everything has to come down. And this may be perfect, the masculine side has developed properly. So what are you doing now? So if you have a parachute and you hold the parachute, somewhere like this, then you have a problem because you're hanging on like this. And what does the parachute do? The parachute goes down and down and down. You're in survival mode. So this is why it's so important. Like so many people say, like with sex education, why? I don't want to become a sex maniac or I'm spiritual or whatever. The main thing is that we need to have balance and equilibrium. And these parts of, as I said, spiritual, physical, emotional, sexual, and mental are important because they create the weakest link, or the genital hole in our case, in our society so often. We haven't received proper sexual education. We haven't received how we actually do with this, with our bodies. There's energy, there's sexual arousal and excitement. How do I work with this? What can I actually do with it? So, therefore, we just get thrown out of the plane with a defect parachute, and we wonder why it doesn't work. So what we do is we're in survival and we're just having to react. Whatever we need to do, we need to get safe onto the world. That means we're just having to do what the other people say. It's like, okay, get safe. But if we can get the sexual education, if we can change this link so that this link becomes longer and longer, so now we're there and finally I get back into here, then all of those who maybe have also grown much longer, they're okay. But it's the weakest link that you need to look at, right? So for me, I have done a lot of sexual education. My emotional level is the mental, the physical. I need to figure out what is my weakest link. When I used to play soccer and I knew if I want to really become good, I need to focus on my weakest link. What is the weakness that I have, not the strength? The strength I have anyway, and it always shines. But what is the weakest link? And I offer you a place if the weakest link in your case should be your sexuality. Then we can do something with it. We can go here into this development phase. And with this development phase, after a certain while, for some there's shorter, for some is longer, you go into the completion phase. And when you have this completion, then you're paragliding, right? You are in charge. You have those in the perfect position. And now you can choose what you do with it, depending on where you want to go. But it is the weakest link. And so often it is our sexuality. It's about how can we be intimate with this? How can we state and make known? How can we open communication about what we feel and what our desires are? And therefore, the best way to do that is look at ourselves, learn from ourselves. And this is why it's solo Tantra, because we get away with all the drama and we're just focusing on ourselves. We do it for ourselves. We get to know oneself or myself first. And then I know exactly the facts. I know where I am. I know what I need to develop in myself. And if that is, I can be in charge and do whatever it is. But mainly the throat is open. And if I can speak out of what is really important to me, what I need or what boundaries I need to set, then I'm one. So, and the problem is most people then have the mental side that is very, very long, this string. But again, if this is here and this string is like this, it will do nothing else than just hang loose there and get in the way or whatever. So concentrate on the weakest link. And if that weakest link in any way should be where you have shame around sexuality, where you feel pain, where you cannot or find it difficult to manage, to master your arousal or excitement through ejaculation, or you can orgasm or you can't, then maybe going into this development phase on this particular subject of your sexual level can make an incredible difference to you. Because then suddenly you increase this length, this string, the parachute properly goes up, and suddenly you're in charge. So you're going from survival, jumping out of the plane with a defunct parachute that puts you into this spiraling down, and you just need to see somehow how you land safe, how you actually get down back onto the ground safely. Not to worry about where you land, if this is in a pond or in a forest or whatever, you just need to get down there. But when you rectify this, then you can choose. You can choose, I want to go to the mountain, I want to go into the valley, I want to go over to the field where my friends are and I want to land there. You can choose, because then you're in charge. So forget about what preconceptions you have about sexual education, about what this all is about. The Tantra, they're just all sex maniacs and they have no. It's much, much bigger. It's much more complex than that. So therefore, we have different subjects, we have different phases, and we all are asked for to find in the human experience the sweet spot, the sacred union spot, where everything is balanced, where everything is in harmony, vertical as much as horizontal. Vertically, spirit and matter, or sex. The feminine with the masculine. And this is one part that I would invite you to. I run on the 17th and 18th in Dublin, I think, a Solo Tantra weekend experience. We have still 2 more early bird tickets. You can save 20%. And again, if it resonates with you, if you think, look, maybe I need this because I have everything, but somehow this parachute doesn't leave me in charge of my life, then come and we'll work on it. And we'll see what we can do to increase this string. Your weakest link will disappear and suddenly you have this wonderful parachute that you initially bought for. And that is your human right to have that, to fly and do whatever you need to. So you're more than welcome. I look forward to have you in the group and offer you this particular piece. All the best.